It is often said that God gives meaning to life, but to this day I have never heard a coherent description of how this is actually true, because no one has given a coherent description of how they derive purpose in general. I think the problem is that most people who ask questions about meaning and purpose do not truly understand the nature of the questions they ask. When someone asks me, is there an ultimate meaning to life, it's as though they're asking me if a general equation containing only variables is true. The only possible answer is, I don't know, that depends on what you mean and how you plan to use it. When someone asks, what is the meaning of life, it's as though they're trying to ask me to solve for X. The only possible answer I can give is, I don't know, that depends on what you're trying to get out of it. And I say that we're working with variables because no one has defined what we're really talking about in this discussion. Sure, we have definitions which describe what purpose and X are supposed to be in terms of classification, but that alone will never tell us what they really are or how we derive them from our existence. These are simply subjects that cannot be definitively explained in universally concrete terms, and anyone expecting different hasn't fully appreciated or understood the material. But let's assume for the moment that the theist is correct and that universal purpose can be arrived at through logic. Ignoring the fact that God himself is an undefined thing, the theist usually seeks to argue that without God there would be zero purpose in life. But saying that God is purpose is as unintelligible as saying God is light. Surely no one is saying that God is photons, so there must be something unspoken, something that has not yet been defined in this argument. Before we continue in helping to refine the theistic perspective so that it can be properly analyzed and addressed, it would be helpful to know how we evaluate the validity of an equation. The only way to know if an equation is true is to examine multiple data sets, because there is no other way to determine if the result of one experiment is just a fluke of numbers or if the variables are incorrectly arranged. For instance, if I drop an object from 64 feet above the ground, I might incorrectly state that the rate at which things fall to the earth is 32 feet per second. Without any additional data points, one might never realize that the actual rate of descent is 32 feet per second. So if I told you that velocity times time equals distance, I should be able to demonstrate this using different subjects and quantities, like a plane and a person. If I cannot do this, then the equation is false. Of course, it goes without saying that I am not claiming that a person is a plane, and that I am merely utilizing the characteristics which make the subjects relevant to the equation at hand. This may seem absurdly obvious now, but it's a significant point that people often forget. So when you tell me that God gives you meaning to life, you have to provide an explanation of how you have derived your sense of purpose. The only explanations that have ever been given to me go along the lines of describing God as an authoritative figure with instructions he has set forth and the consequences for obeying or disobeying them. The closest similar relationship that I can identify with is that of my boss and myself. No, I am not claiming that my boss is God, nor am I saying that the two have any qualities in common beyond the stated characteristics which make the subjects relevant to the equation at hand. But here's the thing. I don't work for my boss because he tells me to. That isn't the reason I show up every day. I have a job because I have a mortgage and bills to pay, but I could work anywhere with my talents and occupational history. I work for my particular boss because I love my job. Showing up for my job fulfills personal needs, not external ones. If this doesn't describe the relationship between you and your boss or job, you probably aren't as happy as I am on a daily basis, and your life probably doesn't seem as complete. If I tell you to build a railroad and I offer $1 million or enslavement pending your decision, I have not given you a reason to like the railroad. I have given you a reason to build it. God has not given you a reason to live. He has given you a reason to live as he has told you to. The meaning and purpose you have in your life is given by you, not God. If you embrace Jesus' message, you have done so because it has fulfilled personal needs, not external ones. The degree to which you think God has given you a reason to live is only the degree to which you choose to relinquish credit for work that has already been done by yourself. And I challenge you, my audience, to consider any scenario you wish to paint to support your conclusion that life wouldn't have any meaning without God. When you can positively identify the meaningful characteristics of your relationship with your Lord and apply them to a non-religious situation, I assure you that you'll find your motivations come from within rather than without. Because if you cannot find meaning without God, not even on a smaller scale in a different scenario, then your line of reasoning cannot be evaluated for validity and you have not supported your argument. So think about it. Find out what it is that gives you purpose. Go beyond the rhetoric and examine exactly how you derive meaning from a given situation. When you can do this, you'll be in a better position to speak on these philosophical terms, and, with any luck, you'll find yourself asking more relevant questions. Thanks for watching. Alright, so either you click the link or else you're still watching the video all the way through. But But I wanted to talk real quick about why I care so much about using equations in such an open-ended philosophical discussion. And the reason is that it is such an open-ended discussion that it's too easy to get sidetracked and to obfuscate over issues that are not really relevant to the question at hand. What I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to get people to understand their own value system, to understand the standard of measure they're using when they formulate both their question and their response. I think a lot of people are talking at cross purposes when they speak about the meaning of life, because some people are clearly seeking emotional solace, while others are looking for a task or objective, while others are searching for a function that one might continually perform. Now obviously some people believe that we were put here, and then they try to solve the riddle of why that might have been. But I really don't understand why so many people put such an emotional investment into such an irrelevant question as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's two problems with this line of thinking. And first of all, I have a hard time believing that an omnipotent being would go through the trouble of ensuring I had free will, and then put me in the binary predicament of either accidentally following the path he has chosen for me, or accidentally not following the path he has chosen for me. I would think the beauty of free will is the ability to choose multiple outcomes without necessarily being wrong. And second, I just don't really understand what sort of reaction anyone would expect to have in the event that they had discovered this purpose that exists external to their own. I mean, think of it this way. Say your father had never been a part of your life before. Say that he had abandoned you from birth or whatever. What would you do if he showed up on your doorstep one day and he said, "Here's a baseball cap. It's in a glass case because you were supposed to be a baseball player." I mean, what would you do with this newfound information? Would you apologize? Would you defend your life choices? Would you have a midlife crisis? Would you hit the gym and try to make up for lost time? I mean, this whole line of self-pity and doubt, as if one were supposed to feel guilty over not knowing the unknowable, seems like a tremendous waste of time. And as far as I'm concerned, regardless of whether or not you're actually in a relationship, the person you have to live with the longest, and the person you have to be most happy with, is yourself. So as long as you respect yourself, as long as others respect you, and as long as you're happy with where you're at in life, and that's all that really matters. So for what it's worth, those are my thoughts. Thanks for listening.